They want to damage me in any form so that I can no longer represent the hardworking citizens of our country. If I agreed to stay silent, if I stayed home, or if I stayed in my basement, the persecution of Donald Trump would stop immediately.
On the morning of August 8th, FBI agents raided the home of former President Donald Trump. He declared that the raid was unnecessary and that it was prosecutorial misconduct, the weaponization of the justice system, and an attack by radical left Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024. Following the close to 10-hour raid, the nation searched for answers as to why this was happening. Did Trump commit a crime? Or is this actually misconduct on behalf of the justice system? What exactly were the FBI agents searching for? Are there political motives involved? And what does this raid mean for the future of the United States?
I was the first attorney to arrive on behalf of President Trump, and I asked to see the warrant, and initially they wouldn't show it to me. After some discussion, they agreed to show it to me so I could see it. They gave me the copy once everything had concluded. There's not really a whole lot you can do in that situation. They're there, they have a warrant, they're doing what they want, and you kind of just watch. They wouldn't allow me to actually go with them where they were doing the search, so I didn't actually get to oversee the search. They wouldn't let anybody see what they were doing.
The search warrant was originally sealed, leaving many people guessing as to the reason for the raid. But it was unsealed on Friday, and it showed the FBI was investigating Trump for potentially violating 3 U.S. laws, including the Espionage Act. They relate to the concealment, removal, or mutilation of public records, gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information, and the destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations. A receipt accompanying the search warrant shows that FBI agents took a set of alleged top-secret/SCI documents, 4 sets of top-secret documents, 3 sets of secret documents, and 3 sets of confidential documents. But Trump says all the documents were declassified before he left office. Number 1, it was all declassified. Number 2, they didn't need to seize anything, Trump posted. They could have had it any time they wanted without playing politics and breaking into Mar-a-Lago. It was in secured storage, with an additional lock put on as per their request.
He was one of the most transparent presidents in American history, and he wanted the documents out for the American public to read. The documents of the FBI, of the DOJ, of other departments and agencies who were in on the fraudulent Russiagate conspiracy, who were in on the fraudulent corruption in the Hillary Clinton email investigation, and the like. And so President Trump, this is winding back the clock, in October of 2020, when he was still president, issued an order declassifying everything related to Russiagate and everything related to the Hillary Clinton email investigation. That's a wide swath of records, government records. That's a presidential order. That's all the president has to do. He's the commander-in-chief. He has the unilateral authority to classify and declassify documents by just saying so. And that's what he did. Fast forward to the end of his term, sometime in December, January, the president was reviewing documents that he thought were worth the public seeing. And he declassified, and I've said this previously, whole sets of documents then, sitting in the White House, saying the American public should get these out. Then what happened was there was some bureaucratic gymnastics at the end of the administration where these documents were sent to the National Archives for some reason and never disclosed to the American public. It's kind of outrageous that an order to declassify by the commander-in-chief when he was president was not followed because some bureaucrats got in the way. So they're sitting at the National Archives. The president names me his representative at the National Archives along with another individual to try to get these documents out. I did engage with the National Archives immediately. And I said, I have an active security clearance. I'll come down there and look at it. If it's a classification issue, why aren't these documents out? Why is the American public not have access to the documents that have been declassified? And I didn't get a good answer. All I got was, another bureaucratic runaround. Oh, we have some, we don't have all, we don't know where the rest of them are. Something went back to DOJ. How do you guys are the National Archives, the holders of the presidential records and documents, and you don't have a control on it, and you're not letting me in. So we're still dealing with that. The timing is interesting that now all of a sudden there's a National Archives issue related to this raid at Mar-a-Lago. If it was related to that, why didn't they just do what we normally do in those situations and call and say, hey, we think you have X, we want to review it, can you return it? Search warrant? You could have just issued a subpoena. Do you need 30 armed, swatted up FBI agents to go in there, maybe with counterintelligence, for 9 hours? What were you guys doing? What were you guys looking for? What was being hidden?
Following the raid on Mar-a-Lago and his news reports about the alleged documents spread, experts began weighing in on what this could mean for Trump and for his potential run for president in 2024. Mark Elias, a Democrat lawyer formerly with Perkins Coie, who is active on election reform, weighed in on the night of August 8th. He wrote on Twitter that the media is missing the really big reason why the raid today is a potential blockbuster in American politics. Elias cited a U.S. code on classified documents, stating that whoever has these documents and who willfully and unlawfully conceals, removes, mutilates, obliterates, falsifies, or destroys the same shall be fined under the title of imprisonment not more than 3 years or both, and shall forfeit his offer and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. In a later tweet, Elias added, "Yes, I recognize the legal challenge that application of this law to a president would garner, since qualifications are set in Constitution. But the idea that a candidate would have to litigate this during a campaign is, in my view, a blockbuster in American politics." Elias's post raised speculation that the raid could prevent Trump from running again for president.
Well, you're speaking of conspiracy theorist Mark Elias. I think that prediction from that person is not one to be taken too seriously, because this is someone who's peddled these conspiracy theories before. But it does show that the goal of the political left isn't to win free and fair elections where people can choose the candidate of their choice. Their goal is to bar people from even being a choice. And again, that is yet another example of what we see in the poorest countries in the world. I mean, think about it. We've got carjackings in broad daylight, raids of political opposition leaders. That's the type of thing you would expect to see in some third world country, not in our United States of America.
Donald Trump didn't commit a crime. Now, whether Mark Elias and his buddies at the Department of Justice want to try to indict President Trump, they can try. They're not going to be able to show that Donald Trump actually knew what was down there, or that he had anything to do with the boxes. Code section 18 U.S.C. 2071, it says that you have to willfully or knowingly remove or destroy, the whole list of items. Willfully and knowingly means you have to do it intentionally, which means any person who does that. That would, by default, mean that if they want to prosecute Donald Trump for doing that, they would have to prove that Donald Trump personally knew that information was being removed from the White House, that he personally either dictated it or had it removed, or that he himself did it. He knew it was there and that he had some malicious intent with it, which there's nothing to indicate that that's true. I also think it's convenient for them that they're shrouding this in a national security blanket, because they don't want to disclose what they're doing. And so they want to hide it behind the premise that this is, it's a matter of national security and classified documents.
Remember, this is the same Clinton political attorney who was very involved in peddling the Russia hoax, which was really the first effort by the FBI and DOJ to smear and destabilize Donald Trump unfairly and without due process and without following their own rules.
It's pretty simple. The quote-unquote statute that he has put forth doesn't apply to the office of the president. There's only two things that govern the president: the Constitution and constitutional amendments. Federal statute does not supersede those two things.
In his August 8th statement, former President Trump made a shocking comparison to the raid on Mar-a-Lago. He wrote, "What is the difference between this and Watergate, where operatives broke into the Democrat National Committee? Here, in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th President of the United States." The Watergate scandal took place in June 1972, when federal agents broke into the Democratic National Committee's headquarters at the Watergate complex in Washington. Later findings revealed involvement with the FBI, CIA, and IRS. It was alleged the efforts were tied to then-President Richard Nixon, who used the raid as an attempt to win an election against the Democrats. The scandal led to impeachment trials against him and eventually to his resignation from office in August 1974.
This is the modern day version of Watergate, except the only difference is it wasn't political operatives breaking in to their opponent's headquarters. It was the FBI and DOJ busting in to the home of their political opponents. And if the facts play out the way we think, then a lot of people are going to be held accountable, just like they were rightfully so for the violations of law in Watergate at the highest levels of government. And I think that people will criticize that analogy, but I can't think of a better way to encapsulate it for the American public, because that's one they can all relate to. And it was egregious then. It was a gross violation of the law by the highest levels of the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the White House.
Because it wasn't done by subpoena. Normally, if you're seeking documents, you issue a subpoena and then receive them as a consequence. Here, you had 30 FBI agents, heavily armed, showing up. My sources are telling me that even the area around President Trump's great American flag was just full of black cars and SUVs from the FBI. So they wanted this to be a show of force. They wanted this to be a performance. And I think people right now all over the country are seeing it as an extreme and very dangerous exercise of politics, not legitimate law enforcement activity.
In Watergate, they snuck in and supposedly stole a few documents, things like that. Here, they just raided a home, took out a bunch of documents, took out computers. To me, Watergate looked rather small by comparison.
It puts them, this Justice Department and this administration, in that same elite echelon with people like Castro, Maduro, well, Chavez before Maduro, and Putin, and others going back to the 1930s, who would arrest, intimidate their opponents and use the full force of their Justice Department or their legal team to go after people. It is an entirely new thing for this constitutional republic, and it really does put our republic in grave danger. It may be irreparable harm.
The cases continue to grow, not only on potential violations of the law from the Biden administration, but also on possible conflicts of interest within the legal system. A key figure in this has become a judge who signed the warrant to raid Mar-a-Lago. United States Magistrate Judge for the Southern District of Florida, Bruce Reinhardt.
We're now learning other things about this scenario. So we now know in June there was an offer of cooperation and the FBI and the Justice Department were there. That seems odd then to raid a place when you had cooperation. Secondly, we know that the judge who authorized this search warrant, Judge Reinhardt, he previously, 6 weeks before signing the warrant, recused himself from a case involving Donald Trump. This was the lawsuit that Donald Trump filed against Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, saying they engaged in a conspiracy and smeared me in a RICO way, in a racketeering way, during the 2016 election with their false Russia collusion allegations. The judge recused himself on June 22nd from that case, saying he couldn't be impartial in a case brought by Donald Trump. That's a major declaration. It is required by a judge if they feel they can't be impartial. 6 weeks later, though, he felt comfortable signing a warrant for the same figure, Donald Trump. We'll need to find out more why that is, but that adds to the concerns of the Americans. All right, now you got the FBI going to a guy that seems to have an impartiality issue with Democrats and Donald Trump. But it gets worse. We now know there are Facebook posts by this judge 1 year before he was named to the bench. He was named to the bench in 2018. In 2017, he had a Facebook post in which he called into question President Trump's moral character, the sitting president of the United States. Now, at this time, he wasn't a judge, he was a lawyer, but normally that expression of political opinion would cast most Americans and say he can't be a neutral arbiter in a search warrant involving the person he just questioned the moral integrity of.
Meanwhile, Trump's lawyers say that Trump had been cooperating with authorities for months, raising questions about the justification and appropriateness of the search.
We had given them access to the room before. You know, they had said, we'd like to search, we think you have classified information, and we think it's in this storage facility. And so President Trump invited the FBI to Mar-a-Lago and was very generous and opened his home to them and said, what would you like to see? Take a look and, you know, show them whatever you want. And so I was there with another attorney, the lead attorney on this case, and we'd let the FBI do whatever they wanted and showed them the room and let them look around and inspect. Nothing had been hidden and nothing had been kept secret from them, which makes this all the more ridiculous. We had been very cooperative with them before, and it's unclear to me why they went to such drastic measures to do this, but they did.
Attorney General Merrick Garland has sought to defend the department's actions, but has provided little information about the case, citing federal law and ethical rules.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. The department does not take such a decision lightly. The men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated, patriotic public servants. Every day, they protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, and other threats to their safety. I am honored to work alongside them.
But not all are convinced by the Attorney General's statements. To many, the raid is the latest example and a long-running concern that the systems of justice in the United States are being used politically, and that the Department of Justice is enacting a two-tiered system of law, with the FBI as a tool for political attacks.
In the Russia collusion case, we have people we know that lied. We know that they misled a court, that they doctored evidence, that there was a decision to continue investigating, for instance, General Michael Flynn, when the career agents on the front line following the operations manual of the FBI said there's no more reason to investigate this. We lawfully have to shut down our investigation of Michael Flynn because there's no evidence of wrongdoing. And the 7th floor, where James Comey and Andrew McCabe said, nope, keep going, go interview him. When you see those amazing revelations, there is enormous evidence of wrongdoing. Just last week, Senator Grassley brought forward a whole new piece of information. Multiple whistleblowers in the Washington field office of the FBI. By the way, the same office that raided Donald Trump's compound earlier this week, that the assistant special agent in charge had a bias against President Trump.
They had people making decisions on what should be investigated or start to investigate or not investigate, and what to shut down an investigation had political bias in it. It's as simple as opening a case against Trump that was based on fuzzy liberal newspaper reports. It was a good reason to advance the investigation. But when it come to Hunter Biden, with plenty of concrete information, it was shut down. It's pretty simple.
Didn't James Comey tell us that when he was investigating Hillary Clinton and he found thousands of emails that were classified, and there was evidence that she took a hammer and broke up her devices and the BleachBit program to bleach it? He basically said, well, I can't go, she did things that were wrong, but she's a candidate. I'm not going to interfere in an election.
You know, when I was a federal prosecutor, I was constantly told, if we ever bring a prosecution related to a political target, we don't bring it around an election cycle. That has been the mandate at the Department of Justice for as long as I can remember. It's consistently been touted as the mandate for the reason why the Hunter Biden criminal probe has not reached an indictment, because we're inside of 90 days to the midterm election. Apparently that mandate has been thrown out by this Attorney General. What happened to not bringing, and we know this from the Hillary Clinton email investigation too, not bringing or announcing charges around an election cycle? That's also been thrown at John Durham a lot because they don't want him to bring more indictments this summer. It's too close to an election. But it's okay to prosecute President Trump possibly and raid his home inside 90 days. There is no equal application of the law anymore. It's gone.
Another growing concern is that of the intel community and the administrative state, often framed as the deep state of unelected bureaucrats.
Take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
The greatest threat to our country right now is clearly internal. And the security state complex and the complexity of the security state, as it has grown in leaps and bounds in the last 20 years or so, where it is now overtaking our system of government and our rule of law. We can no longer deny that.
We have, a dozen or more whistleblowers coming to the Justice Department, not going to the majority party, coming to the minority party and saying, here's what's happening. We're being told to label crimes as domestic terror threats. We're, domestic threats of violence, not against school shooters, not against Epstein's client list, but against parents who go to school board meetings or against people who speak out against things that the Biden administration is doing.
As the raid on Mar-a-Lago took place, analysts were also quick to note that President Trump is not the only target. Members of the Freedom Caucus and any person of prominence who has stood by President Trump are also being targeted by the Biden administration. This includes Representative Scott Perry, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Peter Navarro, General Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, and others.
Well, I have the phone back since I've learned from my attorneys or through my attorneys with the Department of Justice that I am not a target of an investigation, which quite honestly begs the question, then why did they seize my phone? So one of the concerns that, first of all, it's my personal phone, so conversations with my wife, other legislators, constituents, they're all on that phone. And there's a reason that we have a separation of powers. We don't want the executive branch trying to coerce the legislative branch to do anything or to not do anything or vote a certain way or not vote a certain way. Right now, it looks like the DOJ, for maybe the first time in history, is preparing to pierce that veil.
Everyone's seen what they've done to me since day one. They tried to take my name off the ballot with a ridiculous court case, putting me on the witness stand under oath, accusing me of insurrection, which is such an insult and such a lie. But they're coming after that list of people that you just named because we are doing this for the right reasons. We're doing this for the American people.
The FBI had a phony case against me for over 4 years, and it was an absolute persecution by the Department of Justice and the FBI, and frankly, elements of the previous White House that we now know is completely false. And yet they continued to persecute me, and they spent millions of man hours. They spent millions of dollars to discover that. In fact, from a special prosecutor who investigated the thing on behalf of the Department of Justice, they found that no crimes were committed, and yet they continued to persecute me, and they knew it from the beginning, just as they know what is going on here with President Donald J. Trump. My reaction to the raid on Mar-a-Lago was not surprised. I was not surprised. When I got word of it, I was upset. I was disappointed that our unprecedented, totally unprecedented, completely historic assault on our democracy. It is also an assault on our very fabric of our republic and our entire democracy.
I'll refer to my own case and say I still don't have a copy of the affidavit that was used to obtain the warrant for the search of my house. So it could be something that the president's lawyers need to do wrangling in order to get access to, but they should certainly try. And I think that a warrant needs to have that support and not just be part of a secret process. In terms of what the Justice Department is doing here with the president, I think it's entirely unprecedented. It's not to say that anyone in America is above the law, because you're certainly going to hear that as the repeated talking point from MSNBC and CNN. No one is above the law, therefore whatever they want to try to do to Trump is proper. But that totally ignores the memos of the Office of Legal Counsel, the historical precedent, and in particular to do this as is being reported based on issues about documents, when there have been so many document issues that prominent Democrats have had that have been totally swept under the rug. It just, it defies rational explanation to think that this is really something that is not explainable by pure politics.
The full picture of what's unfolding is raising another key question. What does it mean for America if the Department of Justice and criminal investigations are being used for politics? Is the United States now seeing a dual justice system where liberals are treated one way and conservatives are treated another?
We've always prided ourselves as a country that's justice system was above politics, that we didn't do the things that banana republic nations do. Beginning in 2016, Americans began to have doubts when we began to unravel the Russia collusion reporting beginning in the summer of 17, people started to see an FBI that had been weaponized by the Democratic Party, by complaints brought in by people like Michael Sussman and Christopher Steele on the payroll of the Clinton campaign, feeding the FBI information that turned out not to be true, and the FBI complying and opening up an investigation that tied down a Republican president for the first 2.5 years of his presidency. The doubt began to be planted then, and as more extraordinary revelations that come out that an FBI agent lied to the court and doctored information, that the FBI's FISA warrants weren't true, that the FBI hid things from Congress, those doubts kept growing. And you started to hear people say we have a dual justice system in America.
To put it bluntly, you had made up dirt, and then they would feed it into the media. The media would write a story. At the same time, they would take that dirt and they'd have operatives feed it into their buddies at the FBI. And so then all of a sudden they would go to a court and they would say, oh my gosh, look at all this, Russians everywhere with Trump. Look, we've got stories about it and all the fake news. And they'd go to to the court. And then of course the FBI would go in and say, oh my God, we have all these sources, and they'd feed it into the court. The problem is, it was all a lie. None of it was true. It's just all the same. It's just all one and the same. It's people that are after power trying to destroy their political enemies. That's all this is about, which is what happens in third world countries where one party works to destroy the other party. And it's been nonstop for 5 years against President Trump because, look, he was a disruptor. He was not somebody from politics. He had never worked in Washington. And he came in and said, look, we're going to do things differently. And he shocked the kind of ruling class in this country. And they've never forgave him.
It just kind of fits into the whole narrative that there's two standards of justice, one for all of you folks and one for the elites that are running the show. And when you watch Hunter Biden with all the questions regarding him, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, the list goes on and on of these folks that seem to get away with every single thing that they do, where there seems to be actionable evidence right there in front of the American people. Meanwhile, there seem to be all these setups of Michael Flynn, of course, the president, and people that are allied with him. People don't like two standards of justice. They want one standard for everybody, and they want to believe that no one is above the law, but that the law is not used improperly to persecute people that have a different opinion politically than the people in power.
The political witch hunt isn't limited to officials either. Even Trump supporters and conservative parents are facing different degrees of legal targeting that they believe is politically motivated.
There are two different currents here in this long-running series of operations. The first is strictly political, with political purposes, and that is, above all, to prevent Donald Trump from holding office, from running for president ever again. But it's also targeting Trump aides and meant to damage their reputations, meant to put them in jail. The conviction of former Trump aide and advisor Steve Bannon, the arrest of another Trump aide, Peter Navarro, putting the man in handcuffs in public. It's reminiscent of what they did to Roger Stone when the FBI showed up at Roger Stone's house, conveniently calling CNN to tip them off about a high-profile arrest of a man in his 70s who, of course, was not going to cause violence. They wanted to threaten to terrorize him. It's also led to other political campaigns, like going after opposition journalists, like James O'Keefe. The FBI again broke down his door. The NSA spied on opposition journalist Tucker Carlson. So there are political purposes to destroy people, to harm their careers, to end their careers, to put them in front of juries and to cost them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
You combine that with the attacks that we've seen on everyday citizens. The FBI, of course, has been using counterterrorism resources to go after moms and dads who speak out too vociferously at school board meetings. This really paints a very troubling pattern, and I think these arguments by members of Congress that this represents the politicization and the weaponization of federal law enforcement against the opposition, I think those are very legitimate allegations that need to be seriously considered.
In the aftermath of the raid on Mar-a-Lago, Republicans were quick to rally, and Americans are now looking to their representatives for a deeper investigation into the raid that's increasingly being viewed as a political scandal. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has vowed to investigate the DOJ and leave no stone unturned if Republicans gain control of the House in the midterms.
It's unprecedented that you would go into a former president.
We've got a job as the Oversight Committee to push back on this and to really get to the bottom of what's going on and to help bring sunlight to the bad, corrupt actions that are going on and then to work to get it out. And so already this week, the Oversight Committee, we sent a letter to the National Archives to preserve their records for anything involving this.
The raid on Mar-a-Lago, home of the 45th President of the United States, has sent shockwaves through the nation. The country is waiting to see whether the Biden administration moves forward with legal actions against Trump, and whether Republicans counter with their own investigations. Yet beyond the current news cycle, the raid is bringing about a deeper discussion on the state of the American Union, on what the perceived problems with the justice system and the political climate could mean for the future of the country.
The raid on Donald Trump's residence, Mar-a-Lago, on Monday was the latest link in a long series of operations starting 6 years ago with absurd claims that Donald Trump was the asset of a foreign country. That operation was called Russiagate.
They did this before he got elected. They did it for 4 years after he was elected. They were involved in the biggest coup attempt in American history. You know that no republic lasts much more than 200 years. Most of them never last 200 years. We are a real anomaly. And one of the ways that they end their time as a republic is when you have people that are destroying the country in leadership positions. That's what brought an end to the Roman Republic. They actually were a republic. They elected representatives. And the military, led by Caesar, crossed the Rubicon River that was illegal to do because there was a total absence of leadership among the civilian. And so we're going to have Republican leadership really step up to try to rein in the damage that's been done by the Democrat leadership. We're too close to the end of this nation as a constitutional republic unless we can hold to account the people that have brought us so close to the edge of losing our republic.
There's another equally dangerous and much darker current as well, and that is this operation also serves spiritual and moral and psychological ends too. It's meant to demoralize Americans, to desecrate America, to desecrate our symbols, to desecrate our history. We saw during the George Floyd riots, people overturning statues and monuments to champions of our American past like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt. But that's the effect, to demoralize us, to desecrate our history, to desecrate our country, to desecrate our communities and our families. It's a totalitarian operation. That's what we mean by totalitarianism. It's not just the methods, it's also the intent.
This brings up a larger question because we're in a revolutionary cycle where the left has now said, under the pretext that Donald Trump is so extraordinarily threatening to the republic that it requires any means necessary to end him, and therefore we're going to do things that are revolutionary. And what do I mean by that? Well, they tried to do things legally, or they tried to do things that were institutional. Let's get rid of the filibuster. Let's pack the court. We're going to bring in 2 more states. We're going to have a national voting law. We're going to get rid of the electoral college. None of that's worked yet. So now they're doing things extra legally. And that's what happened in the Roman Republic. It happened at the end of Athenian democracy. That's what happened in 1793, 94, to the corrective of Napoleon that was happening in Germany. So that's what the Democrats have started. And we'll see how it plays out.